What happens when an 82-year-old grandmother walks into a courtroom and tells a story so powerful that a judge breaks down crying? Your Honor, I saved 53 babies during the war, and now they want to fine me for feeding parking meters? Those words hit Judge Caprio like lightning. His composure cracked instantly. Tears began streaming down his face as he realized he wasn't just hearing about a parking violation, he was listening to living history. What happened next would restore your faith in humanity and change how you see justice forever. The courtroom was packed that Tuesday morning in Providence. Judge Frank Caprio was settling into what seemed like another routine day of traffic violations and parking disputes. Case after case of people trying to get out of tickets, each with their own excuse. He'd heard them all before. But when 82-year-old Rosa Benedetti shuffled to the defendant's stand, something felt different. This wasn't just another frustrated motorist. Her weathered hands shook slightly as she adjusted her glasses, and there was a dignity in her posture that commanded respect. Mrs. Benedetti, Judge Caprio began in his trademark gentle tone. I see you're here about multiple parking meter violations. Can you tell me what happened? Nobody in that courtroom was prepared for what came next. Rosa looked directly at Judge Caprio, her voice steady despite her age. Your Honor, I've been putting quarters in expired parking meters downtown for 3 years. Not my own car, other people's cars. Strangers' cars. Because I know what it's like when every dollar matters. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Caprio leaned forward, intrigued. This wasn't the usual story he heard. Mrs. Benedetti, can you explain why you were doing this? And then Rosa dropped the bombshell that would change everything. Your Honor, during World War II in Italy, I was a young nurse. When the Nazis came to our village, they separated families. Babies were crying, mothers were screaming. I couldn't save everyone, but I could save some. Judge Caprio's eyes widened. The entire courtroom was transfixed. Rosa continued. For 18 months, I smuggled babies out of that village. 53 babies, Your Honor. I carried them in laundry baskets, hidden under vegetables in my cart, wrapped in my own clothes. 53 innocent lives that would have been lost forever. Judge Caprio's hands began to tremble as he realized he was in the presence of extraordinary courage. I learned something during those dark days, Rosa said, her voice growing stronger. When you have the power to help someone, even in a small way, you do it. You don't ask questions, you don't expect thanks. You just do what's right. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Caprio removed his glasses and wiped his eyes, no longer trying to hide his emotions. But Rosa wasn't finished with her story. After the war, I came to America with nothing. I worked in factories, cleaned houses, raised my children. But I never forgot those babies. Every night for 70 years I've wondered, did they live? Did they have families? Did they know someone once cared enough to risk everything for them? Judge Caprio's voice cracked as he asked, Mrs. Benedetti, how does this connect to the parking meters? Rosa smiled the first time she'd shown any emotion during her testimony. Your Honor, when I see a car with an expired meter, I see a young mother who might be late picking up her children. I see a father working 2 jobs who can't afford another ticket. I see people who just need someone to put a quarter in their meter and give them hope. The transformation in Judge Caprio's face was visible to everyone in the courtroom. Tears were now flowing freely down the judge's cheeks. He made no attempt to hide them. Here was a man who had presided over thousands of cases, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Mrs. Benedetti, Judge Caprio said, his voice barely above a whisper. In all my years on this bench, I have never heard a story like yours. Subscribe right now and comment what you think about Rosa's incredible story, because what Judge Caprio said next will give you chills. Judge Caprio stood up from his bench, something almost unheard of in his courtroom. The bailiffs looked confused. The stenographer stopped typing. Everyone held their breath. Mrs. Benedetti, this court owes you an apology. This city owes you an apology. This country owes you an apology. Rosa looked confused. Your Honor, I broke the law. I put money in meters that weren't mine. No, Judge Caprio said firmly, his voice now strong despite his tears. You didn't break the law. You upheld the highest law of all human compassion. The courtroom erupted. People were crying, clapping, standing. Court officers tried to maintain order, but Judge Caprio waved them off. This was bigger than courtroom protocol. Mrs. Benedetti, not only am I dismissing all charges against you, I'm personally going to pay every fine you've already paid for feeding those parking meters. But Judge Caprio wasn't done. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a $20 bill. And here's money for more quarters, because this city needs more people like you. Rosa tried to refuse. Your Honor, you don't understand. I'm not looking for charity. I just wanted to help people. Mrs. Benedetti, Judge Caprio said, walking around his bench to face her directly. You saved 53 babies during the worst evil humanity has ever known. You risked your life for strangers. And then you came to America and continued helping strangers for another 70 years. You don't need charity, you need recognition. But what happened next shocked everyone, including Rosa. Judge Caprio turned to face the packed courtroom. Everyone in this room needs to understand something. We just witnessed history. This woman represents the very best of human nature. While others were consumed by hatred, she chose love. While others looked away, she stepped forward. The local news crews, who had been filming routine court proceedings, realized they had captured something extraordinary. Cameras zoomed in on Rosa's face, humble, dignified, still not fully understanding why she was receiving such attention. Your Honor, Rosa said quietly, I just did what anyone would do. No, Judge Caprio replied firmly. What you did is what everyone should do, but very few actually would. You looked evil in the face and said not today. You saw suffering and said not on my watch. Judge Caprio paused, collecting his thoughts as the courtroom hung on every word. Mrs. Benedetti, those 53 babies you saved, they had children. Those children had children. Today, because of your courage, there might be 200, 300, maybe 500 people walking this earth who exist because you refused to stand by and do nothing. The reality of Rosa's impact was finally hitting everyone in the room. Rosa's eyes filled with tears for the first time during the entire proceeding. Your Honor, I never thought about it that way. Well, I have, Judge Caprio said. And I want you to know that every time you put a quarter in someone's parking meter, you're continuing the same mission you started 70 years ago, proving that small acts of kindness can change the world. Judge Caprio then made an unprecedented announcement. I'm declaring this Rosa Benedetti Day in Providence Municipal Court. And I'm establishing the Rosa Benedetti Fund. Anyone who wants to contribute money for parking meters, traffic fines for struggling families, or just acts of random kindness can contribute. The courtroom erupted again. People were reaching for their wallets immediately. But Rosa held up her hand. Your Honor, that's too much. I don't deserve all this attention. Judge Caprio's response would be remembered forever. Mrs. Benedetti, you're wrong. You don't deserve this attention, you've earned it. You've earned it with 70 years of putting others before yourself. You've earned it by proving that heroes don't wear capes, they wear cardigans and carry quarters in their purses. The laughter mixed with tears throughout the courtroom created an atmosphere unlike anything anyone had experienced in a legal proceeding. But the most powerful moment was still to come. Judge Caprio asked Rosa, Mrs. Benedetti, do you have any regrets about your life? Rosa thought for a long moment. Your Honor, I regret that I couldn't save more babies. I regret that I can't put quarters in every expired meter. I regret that there's still so much suffering in the world. And that, Judge Caprio said, is exactly why you're a hero. True heroes never think they've done enough. The courtroom gave Rosa a standing ovation that lasted 5 full minutes. As Rosa prepared to leave, Judge Caprio called out, Mrs. Benedetti, one more thing. She turned back, curious. Those 53 babies you saved, I want you to know that they all lived full lives because of you. And every person in this courtroom will live fuller lives because they heard your story today. Share this video right now if Rosa's story moved you, because the world needs to see what real heroism looks like. Rosa nodded, smiled, and walked out of the courtroom with the same quiet dignity she'd entered with. But she left behind a courtroom full of people who would never be the same. Judge Caprio sat back down at his bench, but before calling the next case he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, in 30 years on this bench, I've learned that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about recognizing goodness when we see it. And today, we saw pure goodness." The video of Rosa's appearance went viral within hours. Major news networks picked up the story. The Today Show called. Ellen DeGeneres producers reached out. But Rosa declined all interviews, saying simply, "I told my story once. That's enough. There are more parking meters to feed." 6 months later, the Rosa Benedetti Fund had raised over $50,000 for acts of community kindness. And Rosa? She was still downtown every Tuesday, putting quarters in expired parking meters, proving that some heroes never retire. Judge Caprio later said, "In all my years on the bench, I thought I was the one dispensing justice. But that day, Rosa Benedetti taught me what real justice looks like. It's about creating a world where everyone looks out for everyone else." And that's exactly what she did, one quarter at a time. But Rosa's story was far from over. 3 weeks after her court appearance, something extraordinary happened. A letter arrived at Judge Caprio's office with an Italian postmark. The return address simply read, Marco Benedetti, Rome, Italy. Inside was a photograph that would change everything again. The photo showed a family of 12 people spanning 3 generations. Children, parents, grandparents, all smiling at the camera. But it was the handwritten note on the back that made Judge Caprio's hands shake as he read it. "Dear Judge Caprio, my grandmother Rosa probably doesn't remember me. I was baby number 23 that she saved in 1943. This is my family, my children and grandchildren. We are 47 people who exist because Rosa Benedetti risked her life for a baby she didn't even know. We saw the video. We've been looking for our angel for 80 years. Judge Caprio immediately called Rosa. "Mrs. Benedetti, you need to sit down for this," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. When he read her Marco's letter, Rosa went silent for so long that Judge Caprio thought the call had dropped. "Mrs. Benedetti? Are you there?" "Marco," she whispered. "Little Marco. He had the biggest brown eyes. He wouldn't stop crying until I sang to him. I remember every single one of their faces." What happened next defied all odds. Within a week of Marco's letter reaching the news, Judge Caprio's office was flooded with correspondence from across the globe. Letters from Australia, Canada, Argentina, Israel, all from families trying to find the woman who had saved their patriarch or matriarch during the war. By the end of the month, they had verified contact with families representing 31 of Rosa's 53 babies. 31 families who had spent decades wondering about their mysterious savior. Judge Caprio organized the most unusual court session in legal history, a reunion that brought Rosa face to face with the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of the babies she had saved 8 decades earlier. The day of the reunion, Providence Municipal Court was transformed. The courtroom was decorated with flowers from around the world. Translators stood by to help communicate in Italian, Hebrew, Spanish, and Portuguese. News crews from 6 countries had descended on the small Rhode Island courthouse. But Rosa sat quietly in the defendant's chair she had occupied weeks earlier, now wearing her finest dress, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was unfolding. Judge Caprio had traded his usual black robes for a suit, recognizing that this was no longer about legal proceedings, this was about human connection at its purest form. One by one, Rosa met her babies. Marco, now 80 himself, was the first to approach. He knelt beside Rosa's chair and took her weathered hands in his. "Nana Rosa," he said in Italian. "You sang Stella Stellina to me when I cried. I've sung it to my children and grandchildren for 80 years, never knowing who taught it to me first." Rosa's eyes filled with tears as she began to hum the lullaby she had used to comfort terrified babies during the darkest chapter of human history. But the most powerful reunion was yet to come. An elderly woman in a wheelchair was rolled forward. She looked to be about Rosa's age, but her eyes held a sharpness that commanded attention. Mrs. Benedetti, she said in accented English. I'm Rebecca Goldstein. You saved me when I was 6 months old. But you didn't just save me, you saved my twin brother Aaron. Rosa's face went pale with recognition. The twins. You were so small. I had to carry you both at the same time. It was the most dangerous rescue because you were twice as much to hide. Rebecca smiled. Aaron and I never married, never had children. We dedicated our lives to finding you. We became Holocaust educators, traveling the world, sharing our story. But we never knew the name of our angel. What Rebecca revealed next stunned everyone in the courtroom. Mrs. Benedetti, Aaron and I have spent 60 years documenting your other rescues. We found them all. All 53 babies. We have their names, their stories, their families. We've been building a Rosa Benedetti archive without even knowing your name. Judge Caprio stood up. You mean you've been tracking down these families for 6 decades? Your Honor, Rebecca replied. Some missions are too important to abandon. Rosa taught us that saving people isn't a one-time thing, it's a lifetime commitment. Rosa was overwhelmed by the scope of Rebecca's dedication. But why? Rosa asked. Why spend your whole lives looking for me? Aaron, Rebecca's twin brother, spoke for the first time. Because we wanted to thank you, but also because we wanted to learn how to be like you. We've spent our lives trying to save people the way you saved us. Judge Caprio realized he was witnessing something unprecedented, not just a reunion, but the completion of a circle of heroism that had been 80 years in the making. The revelations continued. Family after family shared how Rosa's rescue had shaped not just their survival, but their values. They had become teachers, doctors, social workers, volunteers, all inspired by the example of selfless courage they had experienced as babies. Dr. Sarah Chin, granddaughter of baby number 17, had become a pediatric surgeon. I save children's lives every day because a stranger once saved mine before I could even remember it. Professor David Rossi, son of baby number 42, had dedicated his career to refugee assistance. My father always said he owed his life to an angel. I've spent my career trying to be someone else's angel. The mathematical reality hit Judge Caprio like a thunderbolt. Standing before Rosa were not just 31 families, but 847 people whose existence could be directly traced to her actions during the war. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all alive because Rosa had refused to look away when evil demanded silence. Mrs. Benedetti, Judge Caprio said, his voice filled with awe. Do you understand what you're seeing? You're looking at nearly 1,000 people who exist because of your courage. Rosa looked around the packed courtroom, finally grasping the magnitude of her impact. I just did what I had to do. I couldn't let babies die. But the surprises weren't finished. Rebecca wheeled forward and handed Rosa a leather-bound book. Mrs. Benedetti, this is for you. It contains the story of every life you saved, every family you created, every dream you made possible. It's called The Rosa Chronicles, How One Woman's Courage Changed the World. Rosa opened the book with trembling hands. The first page contained 53 baby photos, grainy, wartime images of the children she had rescued. The second page showed those same people as adults. The third page showed their children. The fourth showed their grandchildren. Page after page revealed the exponential impact of Rosa's heroism. There are 2,847 people in this book, Rebecca explained. All descendants of the 53 babies you saved. Teachers, doctors, artists, mothers, fathers, children learning to walk, teenagers falling in love, adults building families. An entire civilization that exists because you said yes when the world was saying no. Judge Caprio had to call for a recess, as Rosa wept openly while turning the pages of her legacy. When court reconvened, Judge Caprio made an announcement that would echo through history. Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing something that transcends law, transcends nationality, transcends religion. We are seeing proof that one person's courage can literally change the trajectory of human history. He paused, looking directly at Rosa. Mrs. Benedetti, cities build statues for heroes who did far less than you. Countries create holidays for people who saved far fewer lives. You didn't just save 53 babies, you saved the future. The ceremony concluded with something unprecedented in legal history. Every person in the courtroom approached Rosa one by one to simply say, "Thank you." Not for a parking meter dismissal, but for proving that in humanity's darkest hour, people were still willing to risk everything for strangers. Judge Caprio asked Rosa, "Mrs. Benedetti, how does it feel to see the full impact of your actions?" Rosa smiled through her tears. "Your Honor, I'm 82 years old. I've lived a good life. But today I learned that I didn't just live a good life, I helped create thousands of good lives." Judge Caprio's final words would be quoted for generations. "Mrs. Benedetti, you came into my courtroom accused of feeding parking meters illegally. You're leaving as proof that some laws, the laws of human decency, compassion, and courage, are higher than any statute we could write." He walked around his bench to face Rosa directly. "On behalf of every court that believes in justice, thank you for showing us what real heroism looks like." The standing ovation lasted 12 minutes. Rosa left the courthouse no longer just an 82-year-old woman who fed parking meters. She was living proof that heroes walk among us, that small acts of courage echo through generations. Judge Caprio kept a photo on his desk from that day, Rosa surrounded by 847 people whose lives existed because she chose love over fear. Because that's what justice really looks like, not punishment, but recognition of the very best parts of human nature. Rosa had fed parking meters to help strangers. But she had fed something much more important, hope into a world that desperately needed to believe in heroes again.